Right, so I made a mistake in the previous episode where I was talking about having seen Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart in previous episodes of the new episodes of Doctor Who, because he hasn't actually appeared in any of them. He's from the classic era. I was thinking of Colonel Mace, so I apologize for that. Still a really excellent song from that episode, but yeah, my mistake, and let's get into the Season 6 recap. Hello everyone, I'm Papa Kenn and welcome to the Season 6 recap of Discovering Doctor Who. I'm blown away that we are actually, we're so close to me finally getting caught up with this show. Hallelujah. I'm so sure I can get caught up by the time the new episodes start airing. I actually don't know when that is. I'll have to check. But anyway, we're not wanting to talk about the future. Today, we're wanting to talk about Season 6, some of my favorite aspects of it, trying to avoid the negative, so I'm not going to say what episodes I didn't like, but just sort of give an overall feel for my feelings on the season as a whole. And I don't know, I might mention like an episode that I didn't like or something like that, but whatever. Anyway, let's start off with my favorite episodes of the season. And for once, I don't have any two-parters in here. Yeah, I know. Of course, there weren't very many two-parters in this season, but at the same time, you know, I found it funny that most of my top episodes list before have had at least one two-parter in them. But let's start off with number 3. Oh, by the way, this is a top 3 list. Number 3, The Doctor's Wife. And there's a lot of reasons, really. First, probably the two biggest being, one, we get to see a personification of the TARDIS, which was just so much fun, so off the wall, and thanks to you all in the comments, I was able to learn that some of the things she just kind of said in passing in this episode were actual, like, she was basically telling the future. She was giving us hints of the future, which I just thought was absolutely awesome. And also, that scene where Amy and Rory are trapped on the TARDIS, which House has taken over. And just that entire segment, while not perfect, was just so Twilight Zone-esque. It was really good and really creepy. Again, it's like, you know, there were a few moments that were kind of, I felt they fell short just a touch on that. But, I mean, overall, it was just an excellent scene. And as a whole, despite my issues that I had with it in the past, I do feel like that episode is worthy of being number 3 for me of the season. Now moving on, my number 2 episode for Season 6 is The Girl Who Waited. And, I mean, what can I say? It was well done, period. I mean, obviously it was a low budget episode. Like, I mean, I can only assume that it was sort of a shoestring budget episode. And it was so well done. They used the limitations provided excellently. And in just such really basic areas that the action took place. Especially in the beginning where it was basically the same room, but, you know, in 2 different time streams. And just the way they integrated that throughout was just, it was seamless. And it was just absolutely amazing, in my opinion. I really, really did love it. And then Karen Gillan's acting in the episode, being both, you know, her normal self as Amy Pond and then old Amy, who had been on that planet for 36 years. I honestly felt that it was just a great episode. And I even watched it a second time with Jill, and she loved it as well. She thought it was really cool, really interesting. So yeah, definitely worthy of being number 2, which brings us to my number 1 favorite episode of the season. And I'm not going to lie. The Girl Who Waited was almost number 1. Basically, that one and the episode I chose were so close, I even at this point, I still don't know that I made the right choice. But, as it is right now, what I've written down, my number 1 episode for Season 6 is A Good Man Goes to War. And I mean, I know I had issues with it. I know I complained about those new characters coming in when I thought that they might have had like pre-existing occurrences like in Classic Who or something like that. But that aside, I mean, the episode as a whole, upon rewatching it, like I think I've watched it 3 times at this point, it's just so good. It's like, yeah, it goes over the top with the epicness. It goes, is epicness even a word? It's over the top, but just it hits the right string. It hits the right heart chords just so many times. And it's just, I can't help but love the episode. I mean, starting off with that over-the-top entrance with Rory and the Doctor blowing up the Cybermen space stations, and then the battle, which admittedly, you know, the battle was kind of hokey, but still, what was going on felt intense. It felt like an epic scene. And then that moment where the clone of Baby Melody Pond, the Flesh Baby, just disintegrates, and Karen Gillan's acting and just the horror of what just happened. I mean, I'm getting chills thinking about it right now. It's just so good. Such a great episode, and one that it's just by far my absolute favorite of this season. Again, The Girl Who Waited is so close, and there might be times where I would probably switch the positions. But overall, those are my top 3. Stating again, number 3 is The Doctor's Wife, number 2, The Girl Who Waited, and number 1, A Good Man Goes to War. And I actually do have an honorable mention for this one, and it's closing time. Mostly because I feel like, just from the comments I've seen online, and even some of the comments on the video, that, you know, the episode just kind of seems underappreciated. It's like, yeah, it's a side story, and even I said that it doesn't really seem to serve a huge purpose in existing. Like, it basically existed for a few moments with the Doctor, and then that final scene with River Song as the setup, which could have been just a prequel. But it's funny, it's entertaining, and I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's an honorable mention, not in my top 3, but one that I honestly feel that people should give a better chance, in my personal opinion. Alright, now moving on, it's time for my favorite tracks of the season. And oh my god, this was a hard one to do. So I basically decided that instead of going over my top songs from each episode, that I would just listen through the entire soundtrack. Luckily, someone has uploaded it to YouTube, because I don't own it yet. But I listened throughout the entire soundtrack and just marked down what songs I like the most. And I actually, out of, I want to say over 60 tracks, or somewhere around there, I whittled it down to 16 initially, and then to 8. And I finally got it down to my final 3 with, yes, an honorable mention. And starting off the list at number 3 is Growing Up Fast. And this one, it's, and I mentioned this back in the episode that it came up in, it's just, it's simple, and it's honestly, it's kind of a childish tune, but I just love the Celtic feel it has. I love how happy it is, and it's one of those songs that, I mean, the music in Doctor Who is great. I absolutely love pretty much all of it, but it stood out in that it wasn't your typical, basically anything that isn't super orchestrated most of the time is basically like woodwinds playing, or maybe even a flute. But this is just one where it's a guitar playing with, you know, a few other light instruments, and it just has such a nice, happy feel, which, you know, unfortunately isn't something we always get in Doctor Who. We don't always get the super happy, fun music. So I really appreciated that, and that's why it's my number 3. Now, my number 2 song of Season 6 is Brigadier, Lethbridge, Stewart. And it's like I said in the previous episode, it's just because, well, again, 2 reasons. One, because of who it's paying homage to, even though I did find out that it's not the character I thought it was. To find out what I have about this character, without even really any spoilers, just knowing that the character was basically the Doctor's best friend. And the actor himself, just like, you know, paying that tribute to him is so cool. And then the music itself is just beautiful. It's beautiful, and it builds up from just like, you know, this very light, sad tune to a intense, like, you know, basically a send-off. And I just absolutely, it was so good. I just absolutely love that about the song. That's one that I definitely have played multiple times, for sure. And then finally, my number 1 track of Season 6 is Tell Me Who You Are from the end of A Good Man Goes to War, which I guess isn't really all that surprising since it was also my #1 episode. But just for that, it's not even so much how the song makes me feel, it's just that I can see everything that's going on in the episode while that music is playing. It just feels so right, and just even the build-up it has is just so emotional and so powerful. I just absolutely loved it. Now, even like the episodes, those are 2 songs, like the top 2 could be interchangeable for me depending on my mood, but overall, again, it's like my top 3 is are Growing Up Fast, Brigadier, Lethbridge, Stewart, and Tell Me Who You Are. And the honorable mention, which honestly it could have been the top on the list, but I felt like it would have been kind of cheating because it's one of those songs that reuses a theme that recurs throughout most of the music in Doctor Who, and that is I Am the Doctor in Utah. And that's just, it's one of those songs that, again, I can listen to over and over, but I didn't feel like it really justified as being able to be in my top 3 because of the fact that it does reuse that theme. It's one of those songs that just reuses a theme that is reused quite often in this show. And moving on from there, well, I'm going to talk about the characters a little bit, my feelings on them, but before that, I will kind of comment on, I guess you could say, my least favorite episode, just very shortly. Now, while I did say that Closing Time, overall I felt like it didn't need to exist, that it could have just been used the end sequence as a prequel for the wedding of River Song. I almost forgot the name of the episode for a second. But, you know, it was entertaining enough that I felt like it deserved to be there. It deserved to be part of the season. The episode that I would say I probably disliked the most in this season would have to be Let's Kill Hitler. And while the episode definitely does have its positive points, it does have some good aspects, it's one of those episodes that, especially coming off an episode like A Good Man Goes to War, you have that however long break it was in between, and then we come back to this episode that just so obviously seems like it was thrown together at the last second, or that, was it Moffat or someone else that wrote that episode? I'm not sure. But anyway, whoever wrote Let's Kill Hitler, it just seemed like they were kind of making it up as they go, or they sort of got written into a corner as to how to progress the story, so they just made something up off the top of their head, and to a degree it worked, or by the end it felt like it was working a little bit better, but the beginning of the episode was just, it just didn't work for me. Other than the song, obviously, again, like a Growing Up Fast, which was part of that beginning sequence of the episode. But yeah, just Let's Kill Hitler would have to be my least favorite overall of the season. That doesn't mean I hate it, but it's definitely one that I won't really be revisiting anytime soon. Alright, but moving on from there, I want to talk just a little bit about the characters from this season. The main ones, obviously, which would be the Doctor, Amy, Rory, and River Song. Now, as for the Doctor, I mean, Matt Smith solidified himself as the Doctor last season, in Season 5, and he continued to do a great job in this season. I mean, he's very enjoyable, and he does such an excellent job of juggling the silliness, the dramatic moments, the sad moments, just like every emotion he's really good at, and he's very adept at emoting throughout the entire show, or throughout the entire season. And I mean, again, that carries over from the previous season. No real growth on the Doctor, I would say. Of course, I think that's kind of a consistent thing. Like, the Doctor rarely grows as a character, I guess you could say, with certain exceptions, I guess you could say. But overall, just like, really good throughout the season. No complaints regarding the Doctor. Actually, I didn't even write this down, but I just thought of one thing. One thing, and I blame this on the writing, but one thing about the Doctor that did bother me this season is it's during the two-parter where I think it's the Rebel Flesh and the episode that comes after that. I forget the names of the episodes, but it's the moment where basically at first we think it's the doppelganger Doctor that chokes Amy, but then later we find out that it was actually the Doctor all along. And I just... That scene right there, once it's revealed that that was the Doctor, that either pretended or had something happen to him that freaked him out, and then he puts his hands around Amy's neck and holds her against a wall. I just... That really makes me angry. But again, I blame that on the writing. It was a very intense scene. It was a very crazy scene. But as far as the writing goes, that's just something I can't really forgive. It's like, I mean, Amy didn't trust the doppelganger enough. It's like, he could have just started acting crazy, saying hurtful things, not physically attacking. That's just... Yeah, I just, that still really bothers me. I'm sorry to kind of ramble there for a second, but it's just, it literally came to me as I was getting ready to transition. But yeah, so overall, for this season, the Doctor was really good, except for that part that was poorly written. But moving on, as far as Amy Pond, continuing from the previous season, she's a very strong character, an amazing character. I mean, I love her throughout. She is definitely up there as one of my favorite companions that I've been able to experience so far in Doctor Who. My complaint is that, with some exceptions, she doesn't really seem to have any character growth throughout the season. The only time where that really seems to happen, that like there seems to be some real character growth, is during A Good Man Goes to War, where we find out, or basically where she's, defending the baby, and we're getting to see a different side of Amy's, like, the very protective side. The side that will rely on other people, as opposed to, just basically... sticking up for herself, which is like by far, it's like she pretty much always sticks up for herself, which is very commendable. But I don't know, it's just like, that was just like a really minor aspect where it's like, overall, she kind of bounces back and forth as far as the personality goes. Not being a bad personality by any means, I just don't really see any growth. And then there was I guess you can't really count the alternate timeline when all time happens at the same time. That was enjoyable for sure, but yeah, I just I don't know, there's just certain aspects that it felt like at times Amy would act however the writers wanted her to act. It didn't feel like a natural progression for her character, if that makes any sense. And then there's also old Amy, which was definitely up there, but the fact that old Amy doesn't exist anymore because of what occurred, it kind of, I don't know, that's hard to explain, but just overall I feel like she wasn't a very dynamic character. She did have certain elements, well actually even before I transition over, I feel like I'm rambling still, but in the, not closing time, but in the one where they're stuck in the big hotel, why am I forgetting the name of the episode? Right, the God Complex. I am so bad. It's late at night, that's how I'm going to blame it on that. But the God Complex, when she, basically the Doctor either lies or convinces her to no longer have faith in him, it's like that doesn't really seem to transition into the future. It's just like, it seems like her feelings toward him in general just haven't changed at all since then, which seems like it would be a pretty devastating, or at least a life-altering thing to learn about, your best friend, the person that you had been, having so much faith in for so long. But I don't know, it felt kind of wishy-washy, again, on the part of the writers. As far as Karen Gillan's acting goes, top-notch. Then we go on to Rory, and Rory is pretty much my favorite character of the show now. He definitely developed very strongly throughout season 5, and then in this season, he seems to juggle pretty well this element of needing to be all business, being a badass when he needs to be, but at the same time, not really changing who he is. He still continues to be, a bit awkward. He seems to have matured over time for sure. But it's like but he's still sort of awkward, and he's very caring individual. It's like even though he does start acting like more of a badass in general, he never lets that soft side, that caring side of him go, which is really commendable. So in that way, I would say he's probably the most dynamic character of the entire season, at least from my perspective. If you feel otherwise, please do let me know. But that's just my perspective overall. And then River Song, slash Melody Pond. Now, overall, I really do like River Song. I do. And Alex Kingston's portrayal of her makes the character. Definitely. But as I've taken time to think about the things that we learned this season, the things that were revealed, I can't help but feel a bit, or maybe even more than a bit, disappointed by how River seems to be brought about in canon. Because originally when we met her, she was just like, she was this outlandish or almost an outlaw that knew things about the Doctor that no one else knew. And just, a very, not a free spirit, but just, very independent, very strong. And as far as her being strong goes, that doesn't change. I was like, that as far as her being strong, she is still a strong character. But, it really has started to feel like her life, either her life and to a degree her existence, completely revolves around the Doctor and just being part of him, which it juggles back and forth. It's very complex. It's a very complex situation, in my opinion, that, well, I mean, obviously, she was bred to kill the Doctor. Not bred, but, she was trained to kill the Doctor, to make her a psychopath, to, she would be the murderer of the Doctor, kind of, which we find out isn't really in the end, but she has to hold up that end of the deal. I don't know, it's very strange. And overall, again, I just feel like every element of her life seems to revolve around the Doctor. And then it comes to points where, like, some of the catchphrases that we learned about her from, even the first time we met her is like, "Spoilers, sweetie," and all that. It seems like she learned that from the Doctor, but at the same time, the Doctor learned that from her, which is this very strange, infinite loop almost. It's like, 'cause again, it does seem like her life, her existence revolves around him, but I don't know. It's just so complex and so weird. But overall, it really did diminish my opinion of the character overall. She just doesn't seem as grand of a character as she used to. Now again, that doesn't mean I don't like her character, and Alex Kingston's portrayal of River Song is phenomenal. If it was anyone else playing that role, okay, maybe not anyone else, but most anyone else, if they were playing River Song, it just wouldn't work. Or at least in my opinion, it doesn't seem like it would work. But Alex Kingston just does an amazing job in playing River Song, and that helps me still appreciate the character, despite the fact that I just can't enjoy her overall, or I can't enjoy her as much as I once did, given what we now know about her and how she came about and her past and why she's so crazy about the Doctor. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I mean, I don't know how else to put it, and I'm stammering a lot. But yeah, overall, final thoughts on Season 6. It was good. I did enjoy it. It felt rather disjointed at times, but to be completely honest, a lot of those times when it was disjointed, especially where I feel like they kind of jumped away from the main plot for the second half of the season, I was able to enjoy it a little bit more because I didn't feel like, every episode was just, it was completely encapsulated with this overarching story. Now, it's like, we would get references to the main story at the end or even at certain points in the middle, but it wasn't like that entire episode was encapsulated in the arc itself, which I definitely appreciate. It reminded me of some of the older series a little bit, even if I might not have liked all of those episodes as much as others, or a few from the beginning of the season. But as a whole, I would not say this episode is my favorite, or I wouldn't say this season is my favorite, but it was honestly pretty good. I don't have any complaints on the whole, but actually that's a lie. It's like I was talking about River Song and a few other things, but I mean, overall I feel like it was a decent season, and you know, I'm definitely ready to get into season 7. Before I close, I did get a question from someone, and I'm gonna go check my computer real quick and double check what those questions were. Alright, so the questions come from TigerBlood13, and there's 2 questions. The first is, which season so far has been my favorite? And well, I just commented about how this season, I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I would overall have to say that my favorite season would have to be season 4, the one with Dawn and Noble. And as far, you didn't even ask this, but as far as my favorite companion so far, Dawn and Noble. I have my own reasons, I've stated those. I know not everyone likes her, but that season and that character just, that's for me the best so far. So yeah, season 4 is definitely it. And then you also asked, or TigerBlood13 also asked, what character do I feel has developed the most throughout this entire season? And I basically answered that earlier. Rory, by far. I definitely feel that Rory Williams has developed the most in this season, which just built upon how much he developed in the first season. So yeah, that's the answer to your questions. But anyway, everyone, thank you very much for joining me for 6 seasons of Discovering Doctor Who so far. I'm ready to get into season 7, which I guess is kind of starting off with the next Christmas episode. And yeah, so the next time you all see me, it will be for the Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. And until then, everyone, let me know what your thoughts about this season were. Let me know some of your favorite parts, your favorite songs, your favorite episodes, stuff. Well, actually, no, let's stay away from the negative. Tell me your favorite parts. And then, you know, if you have any negative things, just, you know, don't go on too much about it. Just try and focus on the positive, because even because I've heard some negative things about this upcoming season, I'm going to do my best to stay positive and hope that things are going to continue to be good, and I might have a completely different perspective on these episodes than a lot of other people. We'll just have to see what happens. But until next time, everyone, I'm Papa Ken, and Alonzi!